Hello, welcome to another episode of Talking About Rock. I'm your host, Rob Edwards. Each week, we try to bring you new rock interviews from around the globe. You can check out our website, talkingaboutrock.com, to links to our photos, new releases, and interviews. And we're also available on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, with new episodes every weekend. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode. Today we have for you a new American rock band, Cross Country Driver, a southern rock blues outfit featuring Rob Lamothe of Riverdogs fame and James Harper of Fighting Friday. The album The New Truth is filled with a variety of guest appearances, including, but not limited to, Vivian Campbell from Def Leppard, Last in Line, Riverdogs, Mike Menange of Dream Theater, Doug Pinnick, King's X, Rhonda Smith from Jeff Beck, Jimmy Wallace from the Wallflowers, and Kay Fig from Extreme. The album was mixed by Grammy Award-winning musician-producer Nick Brophy. Coming up next, we speak with Rob Lamothe from Cross Country Driver on Talking About Rock. Okay, we have with us now Rob Lamothe from Cross Country Driver. Hey man, how's it going? How are you?
I am very, very well today. Thanks so much. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. So let's talk about yourself. So in the 90s, you started your band, the Riverdogs. 22 years later, you guys released California in 2017. And now you got this latest project, Cross Country Driver.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff in between, of course. I think it was 32 years between the Riverdogs debut in 1990 and then 2017. Yeah. Unless my math, you know what? Maybe you're right. I don't know. Maybe my math is funky. That's completely possible.
I'm just looking at what they gave me.
That's perfect. Yeah. We made a couple of Riverdogs records in between there. And I've been involved in lots of other stuff, but and then a couple of years ago, this Cross Country Driver thing just kind of presented itself. Yeah,
you've definitely been involved in a lot of projects, and so a little background on you for some of the folks who might not know. You grew up listening to James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, and the Beatles, and then you actually got a chance to see Zeppelin in concert 3 times. That's pretty amazing in itself, right there. You know?
Yeah, I was a little not a metalhead, but a rock head, like a hard rock head kid, you know. So when I was 12, 13, I got into that stuff. Yeah,
they were always my unicorn band. I had a big poster of them with all my concert ticket stubs around them. Like, this is the band I'll never get to see, unfortunately, but the band everyone wanted to see back in the day.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and I was just a kid, but I got my tickets for the last time I went. I got front row seats for $40 at a place called Buck's Ticket Agency in San Diego, and you'd go down. I think you buy them at a record store. I can't remember which record store it was, but now that I think of it, you could get your Buck's Ticket Agency tickets at a record store. It might have been. I want to say it was the Warehouse. But
they did have those deals at different record stores. And I remember paying like $40-$50, you know, to sit front row for different bands. And back then it's like, oh, that was a little bit of money. That was a lot, you know, to get that. Yeah, you're happy to get it, you know. But yeah, weird places for tickets, different. There was a place out here called Waterbeds and stuff that were selling concert tickets. I'm like, how does that jive together? But I don't know.
That's exactly what we're talking about here. Yeah. And, you know, I was just an adventurous kid, and I went and I saw Zeppelin twice in 1 week, actually, at the San Diego Sports Arena. And then I don't remember now. I'd have to look back in my notes probably to remember my own life. But I think it was like 72. Maybe that might have been the last time I saw them, when I was 14, right? So that's one great thing about being older. You know, I'll be 65 in August. And so I got to see Zeppelin 3 times because of that, right? So I can't tell how old you are, but
I'm close to you there. Put it that way.
Are you catching up?
Yeah, I'm catching up. So yeah. I was lucky to see a lot of the bands in the 80s that I wanted to see, you know, and a lot of them are coming back now. They're releasing new music, they're going on tour. So that's really cool. And I mean, you've shared stages with everyone from Guns N' Roses to the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. That's quite a big variety going on there.
Well, if you keep at it long enough, you know, and I was in Hollywood, I was living in LA like during, you know, right in the thick of it, you know, when bands like Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue were playing there, you know, in the smaller clubs. When Motley Crue was playing in the smaller clubs, my bands way back then, we couldn't get the gigs. We didn't know how to get a gig in Hollywood.
Right.
But then, you know, we moved up there a couple times and then finally figured out how to get those gigs, which was basically you paid $500. You bought $500 worth of tickets. The bands did, and you could give them away and call that $500 of promotion, which was everything back then. You know, it was all
pay to
getting
play.
those kind of gigs. And what was that? Yeah, pay to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once we figured out how to get those gigs, and then actually, we had some great connections, you know, to get into some of those gigs and get some opening slots and you know, play with whether it was Cheap Trick or Guns N' Roses, or I could, you know, there's a lot of bands back then that I got to play with, which was really cool. Just as a young guy, kind of figuring out how does this stuff work, you know?
Yeah, and you also work with Logan Stats as a guitarist and a producer for a couple years also, right?
Yeah, I'm in the thick of that as well. Actually, his record comes out a week after the Cross Country Driver record. So his album's out March 24th up here from a label in Canada called Red Music Rising. And I've been playing with him, I think it's probably 7 years now. And my son Zander, who's also in Cross Country Driver, he plays in Logan's band as well. We've both been playing with him for a long time. You know, for me, 6 or 7 years seems like a long time at this point. So
Oh,
yeah.
Sure. Definitely. And you also ran a songwriting camp, I saw also as well. I mean, you've got a lot of different things that you've done. That sounds pretty excellent. Tell us a little bit about that. That sounds pretty neat.
It's one of those things that, I'll be honest, my friend Stevie Salas, he's a fantastic guitar player. And he, you know, he and I grew up together in San Diego. We've known each other since we were teenagers. And I've always said yes to him when he asked me if I wanted to be involved in something. And then he asked me, you know, I guess it's almost been 20 years now, probably. And he said, yeah, you know, I'd love for you to come teach at this rock camp. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, oh, it's kids. They're like, you know, 15 to 18. And, you know, you put together a band with like 10 of them. You might have 2 drummers, 2 bass players. And I was like, I don't know, man, that doesn't sound like much fun, you know, but it was life-changing for me. I learned so much from the kids over the years, eventually started a songwriting camp, which was just super successful at what it set out to do, which was kind of create a space where kids could feel free enough to create music and find themselves. And so we had kids from ages 8 to 18. So we found out over the years, the administrators would say, hey, could you take like younger kids? I was like, how young? You know, and they said 12. I thought, well, that might be pretty young to be working with like 18-year-olds writing songs.
Right.
But it worked. I mean, the kids were brilliant and beautiful and open-hearted. And yeah, it just blossomed. And kids would come back year after year after year. And I still know lots of them they've grown up. They're touring right now. You know, they do incredible shows and tour the world and get record deals. And it's been really inspiring to see all that happen. Incredible.
Yeah,
and I would have said no if it was anybody else asking me, probably, but it was my friend Stevie. And so I said, yes.
Sure. Why not? Yeah. I know our show sponsors are School of Rock Rochester. So, I mean, School of Rock basically does the same type of thing. You know, they're teaching young kids to play all these songs, putting bands together, you know, and that's the same stories I hear from them as well. You know, they're just so inspired by seeing that. When you see these kids getting into this music you loved, you grew up with it. It's like the soundtrack to your life, as people say, right? Yeah. And then you see these new kids getting into it. It's just a new vibe, a new high, definitely.
Honestly, that's what blew my mind in the beginning, was that the kids were so into Deep Purple and you know, Zeppelin and the Stones and AC/DC. You know, they were like hardcore kids, you know, real most of them were like, a lot of them were kind of the outcasts or the loners at their school, or maybe they had just had a couple of friends. They were obsessed with music from the past. And so when I started there, which was probably 2004 or something, or 2006 maybe, that I started, and it was all that interest in the classic. A lot of it was interest in classic rock. And then over the years, and then when I started the songwriting camp, then you really saw them interested in writing their own songs, and that's why that camp just blossomed. And I created the camp every year with them. Like, we created it together. Like, as long as we had some guidelines for everybody staying safe,
Right.
we were going to have creative freedom. And the kids loved it, and they just ran with it. And honestly, I spent a lot of my time riding my bike around, because I had the kids outside as much as possible. I'd ride around, I'd see them from like 20 feet away up on the hill, and I'd say, "Hey, are you doing okay over there?" They'd be like, "Yeah, I'm just looking at the clouds and thinking." I'm like, "Okay, cool, do that."
Yeah.
Or, or they might say, "Well, they'll say, what was the bridge again?" And I would just give them some support if they needed it. Right. So mostly they just got to go up and have creative freedom and not be judged. And they just loved it. They loved it, and they thrived. And I just mostly stayed out of their way.
Yeah,
honestly.
it's just amazing to see the younger folks see that. I see a lot of them at the shows I go to, getting into this resurgence of 80s music and things happening like that. But yeah, like you're saying, a lot of them were like the outcasts in school, didn't have a lot of, and they find their voice with this music, right? And so it inspires them, and it gives them that energy and that inclusion that maybe they were lacking. But yeah, because music can do that. That's what great music does, right? Exactly.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you, and it's so true. Yeah.
So you guys, you've done so much great music, and you, with the Riverdogs, working with Vivian Campbell, tell us a little bit about how that kind of started out, that relationship there.
Well, it's kind of funny, because there was a band called Riverdogs, and they had moved from St. Louis, and they had moved to Hollywood, and the guitar player's older brother was a manager. He managed them and some other artists like Melissa Etheridge. I think he was part of like a management company, and they came to seek fame and fortune or whatever it was in Hollywood, and then they found themselves in need of a singer and a bass player. I guess they were having some personnel changes or something. And one of my old drummers from San Diego called me and said, "Hey, there's this band in LA, and they need a singer and a bass player, and I think you would dig it. And they have some great connections. Vivian Campbell's going to produce our demo." I was like, "Whoa, Vivian Campbell, that's kind of cool."
Right. Yeah.
So
that's what I heard. He was set to produce it after they fired him from Whitesnake, but then he decided to join you guys.
Well, actually, he asked if he could join our band before he went off to he went to, I can't remember where they were based at the time, Whitesnake, wherever David Coverdale was based. Lake Tahoe.
Okay.
And yeah, Vivian was, he was producing our demos, and then he started like picking up a guitar, and he'd kind of play along, and then he would find like a harmony, a high harmony or whatever it was. And so eventually he was playing with us at rehearsals, and it was like, okay, great. Maybe he's going to play on some of the songs, on the recordings. We were thrilled with that.
Right.
And then the night before he was going to head to Lake Tahoe, he called me and he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about joining your band. I want to go make this record with Whitesnake and then come join your band." And of course I was blown away. We didn't have a record deal. We had a manager, and that was it. And it was a great manager.
Right.
But we hadn't really started the journey, of trying to see what we could do once the songs were recorded even. So yeah, we got together, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to go make this record." And, he was going to be back in 3 weeks or something. And then he came back a couple days later, because there was like a falling out in the Whitesnake camp, I guess.
Right.
He said, "Hey, I'm already back. Let's rock and roll." And that was it. We loved him by then. Like, we were such great friends just from the pre-production and the working with him as a producer, and it was a beautiful natural fit.
I was going to say, it sounds like an easy fit because you guys were spending a lot of time together anyways. He was kind of helping you put together some of the tracks or some of the solos. So it just fell into place. It sounds like real easy.
Yeah, he liked the songs. So he had been, knew about the band before I joined, before Nick Brophy, my good friend Nick Brophy. Before we joined the band, Vivian was already knew the band, was going to work with them. I think he thought they needed a new singer, but then we started bringing in new songs, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, keep bringing in new songs." And I had a lot of songs I had been just writing for about a year at that point. Well, I've been writing a lot longer, but I was really focusing on like writing for probably the year before that. And then Nick was helping me with some of the songs, and yeah, it just kind of exploded. He was into the music, and he loved the harmonies, and he loved the acoustic guitar, that I was playing, and then him on electric, or else me on a clean electric and him on electric. So yeah, it just grew naturally. And then by the time he asked, we were like, "Yep, sounds great." And we did the recordings, we did some demos, and that was enough, along with Vivian's name, of course, to get all the labels. We just had we invited the record labels, our manager invited the labels to our rehearsal room, and they came, and within a matter of days, a bunch of labels had seen us, and Epic seemed like the best fit, Epic Records, and we signed a record deal with them, and then we were off and running.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, of course. Yeah, get a name like Vivian Campbell in there, that's going to definitely give you some more interest for sure. I mean, obviously his work in Dio, super well known, Whitesnake, and now working in Last in Line. They got stuff going on. They got the Jericho album coming out. Lots of very cool stuff. I went back and listened to some of the early Riverdog stuff, and his stuff definitely stands out. Right away when he's playing guitar on something.
Yeah,
very distinct.
He's for sure one of my top 3 favorite guitar players ever. He's a guy that can just burn. Like, technically, he could be the flashiest guitar player on the planet, but he chooses not to be. He's not always like, "Oh, where's the solo, man? I want a solo." And in fact, when we were doing that pre-production with him, he never played the solos. It was Chris, the guitar player, that played the solos, and Viv was just happy to play rhythm and sing harmonies. And he's a guitar hero, but not in his mind. He's a musician, right? And he's about what's going to serve the song. And of course, that's why he's been so successful.
Right.
Playing
That's what makes a great musician. That's what I keep hearing from everybody. You got to play to the song itself.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I've seen lately, and it's starting to come back now, is the guitar solo thing. Kind of went away for a while, but it's starting to come back a little bit more. People are starting to embrace it again. A couple years back, there wasn't maybe so much around, but now it's kind of circled back.
I think the internet helps with that because you can, there's people that are unbelievable players that we never would have heard of before if there wasn't an internet. Maybe they're not in a band, but they're on YouTube, and I think it really inspires young people, right? So if they might like guitar, they're going to Google, and they're going to see somebody who they'd never heard of, who's mind-blowing and who's young. And so I've seen some of my young rock camp and songwriting camp kids that just started out as kids interested in guitar, 12, 13 years old.
Right.
And now they're 25 or whatever, and they're just killing it. They're so good. But they can be inspired not just by famous, celebrity musicians, but by people that start out unknown just like them. And I think the kids think, I could do that.
Right.
And they're not afraid to try. So we're getting a lot of killer guitar players, killer musicians out there.
Yeah, it's an easier avenue to release music, but much more difficult to make money on the music at this point. But you can definitely get it out there easy.
Oh yeah,
with all the different available things for sure.
Yeah, if you're on any of the social media platforms or YouTube or whatever, which basically is a social media platform, I mean, then you have a global presence. Boom, you have it. Now, how do you get people to come watch you and come back and subscribe? That's a whole other story. But these young people are really good at that stuff. They understand the medium, you know, and they're so savvy, and they've grown up with the technology, right?
That's what I was going to
So
say. They grew up with it. It was like, it's like second nature to them, you know. So that's
exactly. They're fearless, and it's amazing to see and to get to work with them sometimes. It's incredible. I'm just like, wow, I don't even know what you're talking about right
right.
now. Which is great. I love it. I love that.
Right. So let's get back to a little bit to the tracks on the new album that's going to be coming out, and tell us, maybe you kind of talked a little bit about songwriting, but let's talk about the track Rio Telarosa. That's a new track you guys got out, which is really outstanding. I like that. And we're gonna play that in a second. But what can you tell us about that?
Great. Well, Rio Telarosa, it's a river in New Mexico, and it flows down to the Mexican border. And this whole album is a concept album. It's all these kind of stories that are kind of based on kind of legends and stories and family history from my own upbringing, and things I learned as the generation before me passed away, and, you know, family secrets, all that kind of stuff. It all really, I just got this idea. I wanted to do some kind of lyrical concept, and I'm always just kind of waiting to see what that's going to be when I'm making a project like this. And at some point, you know, I was just thinking about the fact at some points we couldn't travel so freely, right?
Right.
And then I started thinking about, this is during the pandemic, and I started thinking about traveling and how much my family has traveled back and forth across the continent. And that just started, then I started kind of incorporating that into songs, into lyrics, and telling these little stories. And it just kept developing. And then at one point, I was thinking about New Mexico, and I was thinking about my mom. She lived in Alamogordo, New Mexico for some amount of time before she met my dad. And I was thinking about, you know, I was writing songs kind of through generations and through decades. And I thought, I want to write a song about a place, but not in like 1962, but 1862. So that's what I did. I did a bunch of research to find out who was there, you know, way outside of Alamogordo, and, you know, what were the mountain ranges, what were the rivers, and that's kind of where that song came from. I read about the indigenous people, the original people there, and I just kind of went from there. I read about I just did my research, I guess. And I just made a story about basically being an observer. You know, I'm just kind of there, and I'm watching what's happening, you know, down by the Tularosa River. That's kind of what it is. Yeah, it's just out of my little brain, you know, always has little weird stories that are just sitting in my head. I don't know why sometimes, you know. I've done doing the songwriting camp though. The campers and I, every year we created these kind of creative exercise. We made up these exercises because the kids would always say, what do you do if you don't have any ideas and you want to write a song? And I'm like, well, that's a really good question. It's pretty easy if you have something you want to write about. But what if you're just not in the mood and you want to write something?
You got the block. Yep.
Exactly. So we would, every morning we would do these kind of creative writing exercises as a way to like free up our minds, and as a way to not put barriers between our minds and our fingers on the guitar or on the piano or the pen in our hand. And we got really good at that. And then I realized, you know, these ideas work, and you can create from nothing. And I've done tons of it since I started, you know, working with the kids, because they do it. That's how kids' minds work. They don't worry about, oh, it's, you know, oh, it's Tuesday, or, you know, I'm supposed to have a, you know, I have to do this or that tomorrow. They're just ready to get into that kind of creative mind space, right? So they're so good at it. They haven't been, you know, they're still in school, but they haven't been fully indoctrinated because they're, you know, young teenagers and even younger. And they when you offer them the chance to have creative freedom, like I said before, they just run with it. They're just ready to go there. But they, almost every session, somebody would say, what do you do if you don't have any ideas? And maybe that morning they showed up for our first meeting of the day, which is early in the morning.
Right.
Maybe they were thinking, oh, I'm so tired. There was a squirrel in our cabin last night or whatever. I couldn't sleep, and they're tired, and they're probably thinking, oh, I want to work on an idea, but I don't have any ideas. And then somebody would always ask, and it's like, oh, well, here's how we do it. And I use those techniques, tools, whatever you want to call it, the things that the kids and I kind of developed. I use those in my own writing. So Rio Tularosa.
Rio Tularosa. Yep, an excellent track. So let's take a quick break here and we'll check out the track for Rio Tularosa. And we'll be right back here with Cross Country Driver on Talking About Rock. Okay, we're back here on Talking About Rock with Rob from Cross Country Driver, man. We just checked out the track for Rio Tularosa. Outstanding track, man. I'm really digging it. So new album's coming out March 17th, The New Truth. So that'll get released out. And then are we going to maybe look for some dates coming up after that, or what's the game plan?
A lot of people have asked me about that. I think probably the most likely scenario for something like that would be something in Europe. The label's based in Milan, Italy, and most of my career I've been over across the Atlantic Ocean probably 30 times now. Most of my career, the vast percentage of my career has been in Europe, right? So I think the most likely scenario would be Frontiers has a they have a festival. You know, they have a couple different festivals and events they do.
That's what I was hearing. They're putting these festivals together from different artists I've been hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, they do that, which is great. We played one in LA. Riverdogs did in 2018, I think it was. It might have been 2017. But anyway, if they had something like that and they wanted to have us come over for that, then we could build some shows around that. You know, maybe go to France and Germany and the Netherlands and the UK or something and do some shows. But to just start from zero and go, let's go play in America, or let's go play across Canada, or let's go to Europe on our own. I mean, it's so expensive. Everyone's going to lose money in that case.
Right, exactly. I know it's super hard. The expensive thing, it's really out of control. And just the booking thing and sometimes getting venues, because stuff is booking so quickly now. Yeah,
and you know, I can go to Europe now. I have a tour manager over there, and I can go over there now on my own or with my, you know, I've been over there with my younger son a couple times, my older son a couple times, my youngest daughter once, and I can come back with money. You know, it's small, but we sell T-shirts, we sell some merch, we sell some CDs, and I can actually come back with money. But if I went over there with a whole band, you know, that would just, no one's going to make any money. And money's not the only consideration. Like maybe if we could say, hey, we're going to go on a 2-week working vacation. I've looked at it that way sometimes.
Yeah, but you got to have enough to pay for the travel, pay for the hotels, and
that's the thing,
and not take a bite out of you doing all that stuff for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, and rehearsals ahead of time. You know, rehearsing with 4 or 5 people, that costs a bunch of money just to get everyone together. People got to fly just to get to take the first step, right? So yeah.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing they get more of these festivals coming out, like you said, from Frontiers, you know, and looking forward to the new album coming out. Like you said, it's coming out March 17th, The New Truth from Cross Country Driver. You guys can check that out. Rob, thank you so much, man, for spending time with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a lovely conversation. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Definitely. If you folks out there have comments or questions for us, please feel free to email us at talkingboutrock@gmail.com. You can like us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And for this episode, it'll be on our YouTube channel, and the audio will be dropping to all the streaming services. Rob, again, man, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Have a good night, man.
You too. Thank you.